Planet Dolan.
From old ladies with Nazi phobia to reading words that don't exist, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the weirdest conversations we've had with strangers. I'm Pringle the One, and today, I'll be your narrator. One time, Helbin was on a bus reading a comic when an old woman sat across from him with 4 bags of cat food, which wouldn't be that weird, but she was eating the cat food. He didn't really want to engage with her, so he put on his headphones. Suddenly, she screamed, "You kids are ruining my life!" He thought she was talking to someone else, but she was staring directly at him. She then went on to say, "Teenagers are turning this city into Nazi Germany." Then proceeded to get up and accuse Helbin of being a communist for not responding. She got off at the next stop, and he was glad to see the back of her. Number 9 was submitted by Billtheball. Tolop was sweeping the floor in his dad's bookshop one afternoon. Then suddenly a customer came in through the door and said, "You're doing it all wrong." He grabbed Tolop's hand and said, "Hold a broom like this. You'll gain more leverage." Tolop then said he preferred his own technique better. As the guy walked out of the door, he said to Tolop, "Trust me." Tolop yelled back and said, "Are you even going to buy anything?" The man walked back and said, "No, I'm not. It just frustrates me how people are doing so many things wrong." And finally, he left. He then came back the next day and purchased a book called How to Do Everything Perfectly. Number 8 was submitted by Mung Choy. Melissa once went to a concert with a friend, but it was so dark she ended up losing her friend halfway through. She turned and said, "Ah, there you are." She started telling her friend all the things she missed while she was away for a good 15 minutes. Suddenly, someone tapped her on the shoulder and she turned around. It was her friend. She asked Melissa, "How do you know that person?" Melissa looked again. She had somehow mistaken her friend for someone else literally the entire time. Melissa got embarrassed and awkwardly shuffled away from her friend's doppelganger. Number 7 was submitted by It's Nate 77. Back when he was in middle school, Nixium had a pretty weird encounter with a kid in the hallway. During his lunch break, he was minding his own business, walking towards his next class when a guy not much younger than him ran up to Nixium and grabbed him by the collar. He almost had tears in his eyes. The kid yelled at Nixium, Mom, is that you?" And being a young sarcastic person, Nixium replied, Yes, it is I, your mother." And before the kid could reply, Nixium burst out laughing and continued walking to class, wondering what the hell that was about. Number 6 was submitted by TheLightWarrior. When Pandora was younger, her mother and stepdad took her to church one Sunday. She had barely been there 2 minutes when an overbearing woman grabbed Pandora by the cheeks and said, "Oh my, you look just like your father here." And she mentioned towards her stepdad, who Pandora had no biological connection to at all. Once the lady let go of her face, she awkwardly smiled at her and then backed away through the crowd just in case any other crazy people latched onto her. Number 5 was submitted by LStudz. One time when Sidious was waiting for his bus at the corner bus stop, a 20-year-old man stood next to him with a box of Tootsie Rolls. He stood silent for about 20 seconds, then turned to Sidious and said, "Hey, you want a box of Tootsie Rolls?" He politely told him no, but instead of leaving him alone, the guy kept pressuring Sid into taking them, pretty much shoving the box in his face. Soon the bus came, and when Sid got on, he looked back to see the man casually walking away from the bus stop. Apparently he wasn't even waiting for the bus. Number 4 was submitted by Oreo KD. One day in 6th grade, when Gergak was waiting for school to start, he was sitting on a bench checking his phone, minding his own business. Suddenly a 7th grader appears out of nowhere and asks Gergak, "Are you gay?" He was startled by the person and the question and said, "No." The guy squinted and asked Gergak, "Can I almond in your ear?" Gergak looked at him, completely confused by the nonsense question. "No." The guy then stood up and yelled, "You will be mine!" Before walking away, Gergak never saw him again. Number 3 was submitted by GamerGirl789. Snoopy once had to get babysat by her mom's friend's daughter, who was 5 years older than Snoopy. The babysitter turned up and the parents left, so it was just the two of them sitting in their house together. After a few minutes, Snoopy started sweating with anxiety, not sure what to say to this person. She decided to attempt some small, simple talk. The babysitter was sitting there, looking at her phone, when Snoopy suddenly blurted out, "I like dogs and reptiles also!" They were both startled by the sudden sound of her voice. The babysitter awkwardly replied, cool, I do too? Snoopy stood up, said, cool beans, and then walked to her room. Thankful the interaction was over. Number 2 was submitted by I Too Spoopy for You. When Spinal Palm was 17, he was walking down the street once when a guy crossed the street and ran directly towards Spinal Palm. The guy was catching his breath when he told Spinal Palm he just really wanted to read the writing on his t-shirt since he couldn't see it from afar. Spinal Palm said, no problem, and they had a little conversation about his shirt, where he got it from, and all the different colors it comes in. After a couple of minutes, the guy said thanks and continued on his way. Spinal Palm kept walking, and it was only when he reached the next street he realized that his shirt literally had no writing on it. Pretty weird. Number 1 was submitted by me, your narrator, Pringle the One. During my stay in England, I had a barber, and he used to always cut my hair every single Sunday. He was a great guy. His name was Bubba. One time he was gonna cut my hair, and he told me this. You know, sometimes you got to listen to Africa. Listen to the beautiful lands and the Sahara villages and the lions and the circle of life. And I looked at him and I said, Bubba, are you alright? I just want a fade, man. And then he said to me, no, I'm not alright. Why do you not understand this? What is wrong with you? Do you not feel Africa in your soul, in your mind? You are black. You must feel Africa. After that, I was so confused because not only did he tell me I must feel Africa, but then he's told me I was black when in reality, I'm yellow. And I actually have no hair. I just hide everything under this propeller hat. Huge thanks for the folks over on our Planet Dolan subreddit for submitting their stories. We have another question for you. What's the coolest thing that's ever happened to you? Let us know on the Reddit page linked below, and you might be featured in a future countdown. Well guys, hope you enjoy the video. Take care. Peace.